What do you do when you find yourself in a situation where something is needed from you as a man that you don't have? It's the path of becoming a generalist that restores, heals, strengthens, and initiates that part of us as men. God is interested in restoring the whole of a man. In 1784, Benjamin Franklin made these remarks about the Native Americans, which the colonists came to know as the savages of North America. A commissioner from Virginia made known to the Indians of the Six Nations a fund was created for youth education. And he said, if the Six Nations would send down half a dozen of their young lads to that college, the government would take care that they should be well provided for and instructed in all of the learning of the white people. The appointed Indian representative for the Confederation for the Iroquois tribe responded, our ideas of this kind of education happen not to be the same with yours. We have had some experience of it. Several of our young people were formally brought up at the colleges in the northern provinces. They were instructed in all your sciences, but when they came back to us, they were bad runners, ignorant of every means of living in the woods, unable to bear either cold or hunger, knew neither how to build a cabin, how to take a deer or kill an enemy, spoke our language imperfectly, were therefore neither fit for hunters, warriors, nor counselors. They were totally good for nothing. We, however, not the less obliged by your kind offer, decline accepting it. And to show our grateful sense of it, if the gentlemen of Virginia will send us a dozen of their sons, we will take great care of their education, instruct them in all we know, and make men of them. What does it mean to be educated? What does it mean to be trained? What do you get when you have a wholehearted, mature man? For almost the entirety of human history, masculine initiation took place in the context with boys being together with young men and older men in community, in proximity, learning things, doing things together, and most of them centered around physical labor. Young men learned from their fathers. There is a way things work. Young men learned agency through tactile experiences. They were formed and forged through many experiences of initiation, soul to soul, life on life. They were made into men. They became generalists. A shift has happened as a result of our modern technological and information age. This process of initiation in many ways has been outsourced to professionals or specialists. And in the process, something in the soul of the boy becoming a man has become atrophied. A man was intended to have agency, to have a capacity to fix things from a broken mower to a broken heart. In the process of working with his hands and integrating body and mind and spirit, he was intended to cultivate something that would be known as like an integration of his soul, to become a man through and through. In the scriptures, in Psalm 78, we get a glimpse into David. It says that the hidden lessons from the past are to be handed down generation to generation. And in the same psalm, it says David was one of the ways that God was fulfilling this mandate to pass down the hidden ways of God from generation to generation. And it says of David that he shepherded the people with integrity of heart. In skillful hands, he led them. What must it have been like to be led by a man with skillful hands and integrity of heart? Paul, one of the great fathers in our faith, had the vocation of tent making. In the book of Thessalonians, it says that Paul worked day and night in physical labor and toil. I wonder how that lifestyle must have formed and forged the man that Paul had become. I wonder how that informed him when he says in his letter to the church at Corinth, remember to stay alert and hold firm to all that you believe. Be strong and full of courage and act like men. What do you think it means to act like a man? Now this can get easily oversimplified, or worse, get pigeonholed into a caricature of what we mean by masculinity. There is something unique that God has set within the heart of every man, but that uniqueness was intended to be set on a firm foundation of that which is universal and that which we all share in common, or at least we're intended to as men. I want to suggest a way back in recovering the whole of what God meant when He meant man. Winston Churchill has often been quoted as saying, there is something about the outside of a horse that is good for the inside of a man. What if we were to be trained in an experiential, tactile knowing of a little bit about a lot of things? There are many truths that you can only come to know through experience. It's one thing to talk about gravity. It's an entirely different thing to do work on a tall ladder. Let's pause here and just take a simple question. Where are you uncomfortable? Take a white-collar, wealthy guy, and he may be comfortable in a boardroom or a golf course. But put him under the hood of a car, put a power tool in his hand, and he may be out of his element. Take a blue-collar guy, a rough, tough guy that's good with a wrench or a chainsaw, and put him at a dinner with fine dining, white tablecloth, multiple forks and glasses. And what happens inside the man? You see, we all naturally gravitate towards places where we feel strong, we feel confident, and we avoid places where we feel uncomfortable and exposed. We cannot outsource masculinity. To become the man God intended us to be, we have to engage in the places where we feel uncomfortable, uncertain, where we feel exposed. To become the unique man God intended us to be, we first must recover that which we universally all share in common as men. In Wild at Heart, John Eldredge brings fresh voice to Garrison Keillor in the essay he writes in the Book of Guys. Garrison realized that one day he was not being honest with himself as a man. He sat down and he made a list of strengths and weaknesses. He began his list. Useful things I can do. Be nice. Make a bed. Dig a hole. Drive a car. And then he began a second list. Useful things I can't do. Chop down big trees and cut them into lumber or firewood. Handle a horse, train a dog, or tend to a herd of animals. Handle a boat without panicking others. Throw a fastball, curve, or slider. Load, shoot, and clean a gun, or bow and arrow, or use either of them, or spear, net, snare, boomerang, or blowgun to obtain meat. Defend myself with my bare hands. Keillor confesses, maybe it's an okay report card for a person, but I don't know any persons. For a guy, it's not good. Friends, God is always opening a door back to the narrow road to becoming a generalist. Years ago, my son was young, and I asked him, Joshua, what does a man need to survive? And he paused with genuine curiosity, and he said, I know, Dad. A man needs a phone and a wallet. It was brilliant. In some ways, he was right, and in other ways, he was altogether wrong. Now, confession, in his world, it appeared to be true, and yet it caused me to pause. Who had I become? That the model that he was being given for his initiation, that he would become a man in time by carrying a phone and a wallet. So that day, I began to carry a pocket knife. It took me back to childhood memories. Like many young boys, I had a collection of a few knives, but no one ever really taught me how to wield them or sharpen them or exercise a fierce mastery over them. Now, I have to be honest. For many years, I'd pull this knife out, and mostly it would be to open a box that came in the mail or take cellophane off of steaks from the grocery store. But in time, it became an extension of me, a part of my soul's picture. It was a physical expression of a spiritual, a soulful reality of God restoring the whole of me as a man. You see, when we avoid realms where we are shaky or unsteady, parts of our masculine soul atrophy, like an arm or a leg that's in a cast for weeks. It shrinks and gets diminished. But when we take back agency, when we take back exercising and stepping into our frontier, part of us is revitalized and we recover the whole of what God meant when He meant masculinity. Now, friends, we must not allow this to become an oversimplified caricature. To recover the generalist is to recover the whole of what God meant when He meant masculinity. Years ago, my young daughter asked me, she said, "Daddy, would you give me a foot scrub and paint my toenails?" Now, I have to admit, I was uncomfortable. This was foreign territory. I'd never painted toenails before. But the Spirit was quick to say, "Pause. This is frontier. Stay here. Stay here. Stay in the discomfort." And so I dove in. I gave my daughter a foot scrub, and one foot scrub led to many, and now we have a full-blown Salah. It was an opportunity to exercise the part of my masculine soul that needed to learn how to love a woman well. You see, God is after recovering the whole of a man. Masculinity cannot be outsourced. And so my question for you is, what have you outsourced? It might be as simple as your yard work or your finances. It might be your children's education, or it might be outsourcing your children's spiritual formation to pastors and other professionals when God is inviting you to take back the reins, to exercise a sort of fierce mastery. And so another way to get to it is, where in your kingdom do you feel like you lack mastery? Through cultivating the life of the generalist, I observe a strength, a vitality returning to the whole of what God meant when He meant me. Yes, perhaps a man needs a phone and a wallet to survive in this society, but I want to suggest that God wants far more than survival for us. The question is, what does it take for a man to thrive as a man? Perhaps it may start with something as simple and profound as carrying a pocket knife. Perhaps it might be moving into the realm of fixing things that are broken, building things, repairing things, taking an honest assessment of where you have outsourced your masculine initiation, where the boundaries of your kingdom are beyond that which you can care for. We were made in the image of God as men. Since we are men, what would God have for you? What is next in your initiation to become what God meant in you as a man?